you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego. And in today's MEGAphone episode, we will be continuing from our last episode on the topic of tracking calories. In our last episode, we discussed a ton of the little nuanced reasons as to why tracking and counting calories is just so inaccurate. We looked at the history of the calorie and the agendas around that. The agendas that really smart people had along the way from the inception of the calorie to where it is now. We looked at the difference in our own biology compared to our peers and how we metabolize and digest different types of foods differently. We looked at the tools that we use to measure calories and how they have highly variable results. We looked at different factors such as our microbiome, the dynamic, symbiotic, systemic relationship of our organs, our muscles, our fat tissue. We looked at BOM calorimeters. We looked at the difference in fiber, fats, carbs, and proteins. We didn't even get a chance to touch on things like age, gender, and so many other things that go into our calories in versus calories out equation. But now that we have just a little taste of the reasons why calorie tracking is so inaccurate, I'd like to offer some insight to the other side of the argument and why calorie tracking can actually be very useful and how to make tracking calories useful for your specific goals. We're going to be shouting out some really solid apps and companies that can help you do this successfully. And hopefully after listening to these two episodes, part 1 and part 2, you can take the information that you learned and you can apply it to your individual situation. You can decide how to implement everything you learned into your specific lifestyle. The best strategy to match your specific needs to get you your desired outcome. Is there a perfect plan that will work for every single person out there? Well, if you already listened to part 1, then you know the question is a rhetorical question. No, there is no perfect plan that will work for every single person. If you didn't listen to part 1, go back and give that episode a listen first, and then come back to this episode. And we can use tracking calories as a tool, just like any other tool in our toolkit. And this is going to help us live a happier, healthier, and more fit and long lifespan. So the 4 companies that I want to shout out that I have found that is doing a great job in this realm. I found a few of them that are doing the strategy of tracking calories very well. The OG is, of course, the basic MyFitnessPal app. MyFitnessPal. MyFitness is one word, Pal is the second word. MyFitnessPal has been around the longest that I can remember. I remember back in my college days, we had MyFitnessPal, and I used it on myself for a long time. Second is from a company called Renaissance Periodization, or RP. And we've shouted out the RP company before. They have a really great group of fitness professionals leading the way. They have an app called the RP Diet app. And the RP Diet app focuses on one meal at a time, when you eat that meal, and then the combination of macros, carbs, proteins, fats, how those are important and more important than the calorie amount. In MyFitnessPal, you count calories, macros, and you can eat whenever you want. The RP diet has a greater focus on fat loss and muscle gain, whereas MyFitnessPal has a focus on just weight loss. The third we'd like to shout out here is called the Carbon Diet Coach app. The Carbon Diet Coach app, created by one of the smartest people that I follow in the nutritional science field, Dr. Lane Norton. It works on a 3-step system. Step 1 is you set your goal. Do you want to do fat loss, muscle gain, weight maintenance, or reverse dieting? Step 2, track your food. You use the advanced yet easy to use food tracker similar to MyFitnessPal. And then step 3, check in. Their science-based coaching algorithm will analyze your weekly progress and refine your nutrition recommendations to keep you on target towards your goals. And then the fourth app that we want to shout out is, I haven't had a lot of experience with it myself, but I've heard a really good things about it from a lot of smart people that I follow. The app is called Macro Factor. This is a paid app that is much more in-depth than, let's say, the basic MyFitnessPal. With this Macro Factor app, you can set goals and then get dynamic weekly adjustments with tons of data and graphs that, if I'm being honest, it's a little overwhelming at first when I look at it, but then it's extremely impressive and I would think helpful once you get used to it. You can easily track your food with their ultra-fast logger and verified database, similar to what MyFitnessPal is. But this app tracks both macronutrients, carbs, fats, proteins, and also micronutrients, things like magnesium, potassium, sodium, even your caffeine, your alcohol, your omega-3 and 6, and cholesterol intake. And the user-focused design of this Macro Factor app is definitely an impressive look, I have to admit. So the 4 apps that we're shouting out today are MyFitnessPal, RP Diet App, Carbon Diet Coach, and Macro Factor. Before we get into those 4 apps a little bit deeper, let me make my case as to why and how tracking calories and counting calories can actually be useful. Yes, this is right after we spent an hour talking about how inaccurate it can be, which, if we're to zoom all the way out, I really believe that health, fitness, wellness, these things should be thought of in this way. There is no one right answer for everyone. There's no best option for this or for that, for everyone. There are general rules that tend to steer the general population in the right direction. There are these big general levers that we can pull to help us get to a healthier way of living. But my rule number one, my life rule number one still applies. Do what works for you. And how do we know what works for you? Well, that brings us to why and how, and the biggest reason why tracking calories can be useful. We find out what works for us because we take time to explore, we take the time to find, we take the time to find consistency, to find self-awareness, awareness of what we're doing, what results those actions are offering, then tracking the data to see how small tweaks and experiments and the trial and error, how those things are getting us either closer or further from what we want. Quote, what gets measured gets managed. What gets measured gets managed. How can we know how to get to where we want to go if we have no clue as to where we are right now? When I start training clients that want any kind of body recomposition goal, like body fat loss, muscle mass gain, quote unquote toning of muscle goals, which is really just losing body fat around the body part and strengthening that muscle to become more pronounced, toned, maintenance, or even reverse dieting. Reverse dieting is when a person has dieted so much that they've dug themselves into a metabolic, metaphorical hole, which they've taught their body to now run off of a minimal amount of energy, even though they have energy stores that are super full and they need to be used up. That's not a good thing. We don't want to put ourselves into that hole, but a lot of times when we do dieting, off and on, yo-yo dieting, that's what happens. So anytime a client trains with me and wants body recomposition, this is what I do. The first game plan is to change nothing. What? Change nothing? Yeah, that's right. They come in all motivated, all pumped up. They're ready to start working out 7 days a week, eating only chicken and broccoli, cutting out all the sugar, all the alcohol. It's almost as if they're this warrior dressed in armor, head to toe, ready to head into battle. And they come to me and I ask them, well, what's your baseline? Where are you at right now? What are you currently doing when it comes to your energy intake, your movement? Oh, you don't know? Okay, then. I want you to change nothing. We're going to live your life as you have, and all I want you to do is start tracking. I want you to find an awareness of how you have been living. Once you can find the average of that, once you can find that baseline, Then we have a starting point. We have somewhere to now start adding to or taking away from. Just visualize, if I gave you one of those scales, those old school scales, like a teeter-totter, there's two baskets on either side. Right now there's nothing in either side, so the two baskets are sitting equal. But then I put a rock on the left side, and the left side drops. The right side comes up. I put the same size rock in the right side, and now the baskets go back to even. Okay, well now let's say I blindfolded you. I give you a handful of slightly different sized rocks, and you have to start putting these rocks into the basket so that the right side is just 1 inch higher than the left. It's almost impossible. You couldn't do it if you were blindfolded and you didn't know. You just had the feel of the rocks and you just had the scales in front of you. You have no idea where exactly the baskets are rising or falling to. You have no idea the exact weight of the rocks. You're just blindly guessing in the dark. This is the same thing that is happening when you're trying to put yourself into a calorie deficit to lose body fat. You're just throwing darts at a target with your eyes closed. Now, sure, you could take the heaviest of the two rocks and you could put them into the left. Let's say these two rocks are eating way less calories. So you're going to put these two rocks in the left, and you know that that's going to get everything all the way down. And you're going to start exercising your face off. That's the other rock. And then you take the lightest of the rocks and you put them in the right. Now, sure, you know that that scale is going to shift towards the heavy rocks. But the way that your body and your metabolism works is the more dramatic that you make that shift, the more stress you throw at it, the more your body wants to fight back, essentially. The more it wants to maintain where it was, so it's going to super compensate, and it's going to go way too far in one direction. So we are actually trying to play a more delicate dance with many, many, many more variables. And your body is going to be infinitely more complex than this scale example, right? Because, well, for one reason, when you stop giving your body energy, even though you have energy in your storage, your fat cells, it wants to maintain what you've been doing for the last whatever period of time. If it feels like there's now going to be a lack of food, you have programmed in your DNA a defense mechanism. It knows that you're going to lack an energy source. So it's going to downregulate all of the extra energy burning activities that you do on average to conserve energy. Just in this case, the goal is survival. So normally when you fidget or you bounce your leg or you tap your pen or you shift in your seat side to side, or if you forgot your water bottle in the kitchen while watching TV, you don't even hesitate to stand up, walk over and go get it and sit back down. No, your body is not going to do those things when it starts to conserve energy, when it thinks that it doesn't have energy coming in. You're now going to become more still, conserving energy. You will tell yourself you don't need to go get that water bottle in the kitchen. You'll just stay right there laying on the couch, feet up, content with your relaxed position, non-energy consuming body position right there on the couch. Which brings me to another point. The line of calorie surplus and calorie deficit, it's a moving target. So even if you have it nailed at one point, it's a moving target, not just from 1 year to the next, not just from 1 month to the next. It's a moving target on a much smaller time scale. Hour to hour, maybe, minute to minute, second to second. Yeah, it's that freaking complex. It blows my mind. So with a constant changing target, how would finding awareness be able to help us at all? Should we just quit and leave it up to chance? I think that's a bad idea. The way our world is set up is it's set up for easy access, instant gratification, a technological solution for any manual labor issue. You have access to the highest calorie dense foods at the touch of your finger, with the ability to get it right to you immediately with no energy expenditure necessary. You can't win that battle. That is Game of Thrones style. That's the army of the dead versus like the Care Bears. It's so one-sided, it's not even funny. So what do? It's what we've been talking about here on the Livin the Dream podcast for the past 2 years. You become the CEO of your own health and you take control. If you are a CEO of a huge company and you wanted to make more money than you spend, you would want your profits to be more than your expenses, right? Well, how do you do this? Well, you're going to track all of your business decisions. What would a business look like if they didn't track, let's say, how much money they spent on utilities, rent, payroll, supplies, on their taxes? If that company had zero clue what any of those dollar amounts were. Now, let's also say that this CEO didn't have any idea what kind of membership dues that they were taking in, what kind of monthly revenue they were experiencing from month to month, what kind of product sales that they were bringing in. This company sounds like a hot mess. And I would not put my money in their stocks if I knew that that's the way the CEO was running that business. But that's exactly what we are doing with our bodies and our health. We are guessing on the intake. We are guessing on the expenditure. And here's the kicker. Most, if not all of us, are terrible estimators. I listen to the most skilled, experienced nutritional experts that are out there. I listen to hours worth of content on their personal podcasts and their published books and their textbooks. And even those professionals admit that their estimations can be off to like 25%. If someone that lives and breathes this topic if someone that considers themselves a master in this field, if they can get it wrong, if they do get it wrong, what accuracy do you think the average person has? I can tell you from working with hundreds of people that track their calories at first, and they learn and they grow, that once they find an awareness, they are blown away with what they once thought that they knew was actually way incorrect and blown way out of proportion with what they thought their calorie amount was, what they thought the actual portion size was. They're blown away with what the things that they were once unaware of. This is why I ask each client that is looking for body recomposition just to first find a general awareness of what they are even doing to get them to where they are right now. So we practice. We practice tracking, we practice logging, and we practice journaling. What do they do on an average day? Trying to change as little as possible, and they do this for at least the first 2 weeks. This is really a good enough sample size where we can kind of see what's going on over maybe say 10 weekdays and then 2 weekends. Because most of us operate differently Monday through Thursday and then Friday through Sunday, right? The Friday through Sunday habits come out and behavior changes, lifestyle choices change, or maybe they don't, but that's why we're tracking. That's what tracking will illuminate. This in and of itself can be a challenge because who knows what variables you're getting correct and who knows where your estimations are slightly off or extremely off. Are you weighing your food or are you just guessing about a half cup of almonds or around 2 tablespoons of peanut butter? The difference between 2 tablespoons of peanut butter and 3, just 1 tablespoon off, and that's a full 100 calories right there. And that's just one time, one inaccurate estimate, and that's just 1 tablespoon. What if you underestimated by 2 tablespoons and you did that 5 times that week? That's 1,000 calories in the wrong direction in just 1 week, in just your peanut butter intake. Now that's insanity, but that's not how you should be thinking about it. Here's a great analogy that I like to use, that I like to think about when I think of this stuff. Right now, you're in a pitch black warehouse. And when you start this awareness journey, you only have this tiny, tiny little handheld flashlight that can have this tiny little skinny beam of light. You're illuminating 1 inch of one corner of this huge, gigantic, massive warehouse. But each time you measure a tablespoon of peanut butter, you're making that beam of light just a tiny bit wider. Each time you think you have 1 cup of spinach or 30 grams of chicken and you find out you were either way under or way over, you're slowly illuminating and learning a little bit more about this bigger picture. Will you ever have every single inch of that warehouse illuminated? My guess is no. I mean, our 5 senses are limited. Science is already proving that there are many things in this world that we as humans are not even able to process, like on the quantum level, different pitches of sound that we can't hear, different intensities of light that we can't process. And these are just within our five senses. I once heard that plants have at least 20 different senses. That literally blew my mind. We think everything that we can sense is all there is. No way. Yet we have people so dogmatic in their beliefs that the ketogenic diet is the answer, that carnivore is the answer, vegan is the answer. You know nothing, Jon Snow. You know nothing. That's right, 2 Game of Thrones references in one episode. I think that's a record. We have just this tiny little flashlight, small light beam illuminating the real capital T truth. But the more we find awareness, the wider that beam gets. And I know some of you are thinking right now, okay, well, after hearing all that, this is hopeless. This is futile. I shouldn't even try, right? No. Because once a person starts tracking for just 2 weeks, they now have a better picture. It's still a very narrow scope, of course, but it's a better picture than when they started. Now, once we get that small picture, that 2-week tracking time frame, now we make one change. Maybe we start by adding 24 ounces of water to their daily intake. Or maybe we subtract 200 calories of ice cream for 100 calories of dark chocolate. Or we add 1,000 steps to their daily average. And we track. And we collect data. And we measure their inches in their body. We track their scale weight. We do in-body scans to see what their body fat percentage is doing. We take photos. And we journal how we are feeling. And this brings me to my next point. All of these tracking modalities, all those things that I just said, all of those devices and strategies and collection processes, they all have their pros and cons. They all have their benefits and their inaccuracies in of themselves. Let's take activity trackers, for example. I absolutely love my Oura Ring. O-U-R-A, Oura Ring. I talk about it all the time. I recommend it to all of my clients. I think it's an amazing product. Now, do I think when it tells me that I get 15,000 steps that I literally took exactly to the step 15,000 steps? No way. Do I use the exact number to make decisions for my wellness goals? I don't. But what I do is I wear it constantly and I wear it consistently. I only take it off once a week to charge it, the same amount of time, the same way every week. I know that over months and even years now, I will start to get an average step count, an average hourly sleep count, an average readiness score, and that average I can then use as data. I can use it to know that my usual readiness score is 82, but after a weekend of fun and treating my body poorly and getting poor sleep, when my readiness score says 60 instead of 82, I know that that delta is something that I need to be aware of. And then I use that number to adjust my daily habits, and I start to prioritize sleep, recovery, better nutrition choices, stress management practices, because I know that if I don't, and I continue on with how my normal life is, I will break down and I'm going to get sick. My body will tell me to slow down, and eventually it's going to make me slow down. That decision came from data that I gathered over time. The same thing with steps. If my average over the last 3 years is 15,000 steps a day, and then 1 week I get 4,000 average steps for that week, I know that my movement is drastically decreased from normal. If my food choices are terrible, if my workouts are non-existent, if my movement is not there, I can see that tangible data, and I know to get my booty outside in the morning for an extra 10-minute walk, and then maybe a few more walks thrown in throughout the week. Do I care about my actual 4,000 step number? Do I care if it's 100% accurate at 4,000? No, because I know that my average, based on the specific tracker that I've been using consistently, I know my average is over 3 times that number. It's just an overall awareness tool. It's not an end-all, be-all exact number that I base every decision on. And this is where I have some trouble with my engineer type clients, because those type of people, they see everything as a math problem. And math problems, this math problem that you're trying to attack has way too many variables, way too many corners of that warehouse that are still pitch black. It's really tough to come at this puzzle with the engineer mindset because yes, maybe it works for a little bit, but then the body is going to adjust. The body adapts and it changes and it moves that target. And when that happens and your math equation stops working, at least how you wrote it up in the beginning, you're probably going to get frustrated or you're probably going to keep driving home what you've been doing and it's going to stop working for you. So I like to think of this as more of a carnival game. You know, when you walk up to that carnival game that has all of those moving targets everywhere and you have 5 baseballs in your hand and you're going to either throw a baseball at a target or you're going to shoot a laser or a water gun at these targets. And you start off by seeing the accuracy of your throw or your shot or your instrument, right? You see what the accuracy is. Where did that throw go? Okay, it just went to the left, and so I need to adjust to the right. Shoot, the target moved further left, so now I have to adjust for my inaccurate throw and the target. If all you do is throw the same shot at the same place, the target is going to be long gone and you've done nothing to help get to your goal. So bringing this back to training, when you track just a little bit, you find awareness of just how many calories this food is or that drink is, and you start to realize portion sizes are a little bit more realistic towards 4 ounces of chicken not being 8, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter instead of 5. You start to both consciously and unconsciously get a better idea of when the food label on the back of that food item says serving size 28 grams. Well, what does that even feel like? What does that look like? You're not going to be perfect if you're guessing, but you're at least going to get closer. No one's perfect when it comes to just guessing, but if you're consistent and you can start to see where that consistency is getting you, eventually the goal is going to be to stop counting and stop tracking and just make more intuitive decisions. Well, today I sat a lot, so I didn't move nearly as much as I usually do. I ate a slightly larger breakfast than I'm used to, and now I'm going out to dinner with friends. Oh man, that's a bunch of things compounded in the wrong direction. So instead, I'm going to go to dinner and I'm going to get, instead of the normal burger and fries that I would get with my order, I'm going to have a meat patty with steamed veggies and maybe eat half of that now and save half of it for later. So I just made a decision based on my actions from that previously that day. Or maybe I went on a huge hike. I went on a 10-mile hike for a special event. I didn't get to eat much. I didn't have breakfast. I only had a bar and some nuts on the hike. I know that I can probably refuel with my friends at dinner with a burger and a fries and maybe a hazy IPA to wash it all down because, well, I'm celebrating a great achievement. I know how depleted some of my energy stores are. I'm with people that I love and I enjoy being around, and I just bonded through this challenge. And who cares? I'm not going to stress about it because I know what my averages look like, and this is one of those outlier days. Tracking calories is just like using an activity tracker, a sleep tracker. Unless you're an elite bodybuilder or you're trying to win Mr. Olympia or you're an elite athlete trying to go to the Olympics, you're trying to beat Usain Bolt in a 100-meter sprint, when just the tiniest of fraction of a percentage could be the difference between first place and no place, unless that's you, the accuracy that these tracking strategies offer should be used more of as an exploration tool, attacked with curiosity, not religious fervor. So let's start moving into actionable things that can be done. And when I give you this advice, you also have to obviously know yourself and what are your tendencies. If you're an obsessive person, if you have had body image issues or disordered eating in the past, you have to realize how your brain works. You have to meet yourself where you're at, how you react to this type of topic, and maybe this is not the best strategy for you, right? Maybe you're someone that just works on pulling the bigger levers, lifting the biggest rocks that will make the biggest impact towards your goals. Counting and tracking and being obsessive over this 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons idea is mostly not going to benefit you. You have to know yourself, be honest with yourself. For me, I love data. I love looking at the number on the scale, with just extreme curiosity. I step on the scale after I had a weekend of drinking and eating junk food, and I look and I wonder, what the heck? How did I go down in weight? Or I add an extra meal to my daily average, and a week later I check my body fat percentage and it hasn't changed. And I look at it with wonder and I say, how did this happen? If it was a math equation, wouldn't that mean that should be gaining weight? What could have made this work the way that it did? And I don't get furious with the fact that these numbers aren't going the way that I wanted. Okay, so maybe sometimes I do get flabbergasted at first. Do we still use the word flabbergasted? What a great word. But after that, I'm just curious as to what I should do next. Okay, that didn't work. That isn't getting me into the right direction. What should I adjust next? What's my next try on the road of trial and error? It's an explorative game rather than a battle with my physiology. So if you can come at it in this way, it's a puzzle. I say the word puzzle because it isn't a problem. It isn't an issue. It's a puzzle. And puzzles have an answer that can be solved. Some puzzles are much more challenging. Some require more time. But with a puzzle, you can explore and get closer to the answer over time. With patience, with curiosity, with consistency, and with effort for sure, your puzzle can start to be answered. And along the way, you find out so much more about yourself. And in my opinion, that's one of the best things about this life that we get to live. We only get 80 to 100 years, if we're lucky, to explore. And then it's on to the next thing, whatever that is. Okay, so that went philosophical really fast. Let's come back to actionable. I'm sorry. What I recommend to people who want to start gathering awareness and who are not susceptible to any type of obsessive or disordered eating issues, I tell them to start using the app MyFitnessPal. It's free. It's easy to start and it's really basic to figure out. It has probably one of the largest databases of pretty much every type of food that you could think of in as many different variations as you can imagine. Scrambled eggs, poached eggs, all the different types of eggs. It's in your pocket all the time. All it takes is that if something goes in your mouth, then you input it into MyFitnessPal. Yes, there are times where even that is challenging. Yes, you're not going to be perfect and you'll forget some stuff, especially at first. It's also really challenging when you make homemade meals. If those meals have 20 ingredients, yes, you have to put them all in one by one. But after the first time you log it, it gives you the ability to save it as a meal. So if you ever eat that same meal again, it's right there ready for you to select it's saved. The more you use the app, the easier it becomes. Just like anything, you're going to have your go-to foods. And the more that you log those go-to foods, the more that they're recommended to you when you input them at a certain time of day. So the more consistent you can get in this way, the easier that logging on this app works. You start eating consistently on the app and the AI really helps you make it easier as you go. And then as you use it more, you start to have an awareness of what your averages look like. Your average daily calories, your weekday averages compared to your weekend averages, your daily macronutrient intake, how many carbs, fats, proteins am I getting on average? Oh, and let's not brush over the fact that you are tracking. Even if you're not showing it to a coach or a personal trainer and you're just doing it for yourself, I can almost guarantee that you're going to find a time where you're about to eat a whole pint of chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream with brownie chunks in it, which is the goat of all ice creams. Don't even argue with me here. Chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream with brownie chunks? I'm pretty sure Satan himself invented that one to tempt even the most disciplined person. But you're going to find the time where you want to eat a full pint of ice cream and you decide, you know what? I don't want to put a full pint in this app. I know that that doesn't match my goals, even though I definitely want to eat the whole pint so bad. Instead, I'll stick to one serving. Okay, maybe 2 servings, but at least inputting the ice cream in the app made me stop and think and consider and find a moment of awareness. Then a decision can be made. And when you make that decision, make it without adding some sort of judgment or emotional value to it. If you decide to eat a whole pint of ice cream and that's what you want to do, okay then, support yourself, support your adult decision, and live with the results. Don't sit there and beat yourself up for it and say, oh, I'm so bad, and it's not going to do anything for you. And it actually makes your decision worse because your thoughts create chemistry in your body. Your thoughts create physical, neurological structures in the body and brain. And when you're over here chastising yourselves for how bad you've been, you're putting your amygdala on high alert with fear-based thinking, and those catastrophizing, spiraling thoughts that send the stress hormone cortisol blasting through your body. Now you're compounding things in the exact opposite direction of your goals. Why would you do that to yourself? If you're going to choose it, then choose it. Log it as data, and the next 3 or 4 opportunities that you have, you make choices that are actually going to take you the other direction, closer towards your goal. If over time you're constantly tipping the scales in the direction that you want, it doesn't matter that if you put some smaller pebbles on the other side of the scale that maybe don't 100% match your long-term goals. It's the balancing act of life. Embrace the challenge of the puzzle, but maybe don't do it with so much stress and seriousness. If you're in a life-threatening position, like serious diabetes or cancer or anything like that, then yes, maybe you do need to be more serious and a little less lenient and a little more urgent. But other than that, are you in a competition that requires pinpoint accuracy with very little wiggle room? Maybe you need to be a little more dialed in. But if you're someone just trying to live your best life, live your own dream life with balance and awareness, and maybe lose a few pounds and gain a few pounds of muscle in the process, okay then. That's when you start to be a little less serious. I think you see where I'm going with this. And once you get MyFitnessPal down, maybe that's where your tracking stops. Or maybe you go to the next level and you start to use an app like the Carbon Coach Dieting app or the RP Diet app. These will be opportunities to get feedback from the coaching algorithm to help you decipher your food intake, and that will help you make the choices that you need to make to help you get closer to your goals. These apps have a lot of great accountability features that keep you on track as well, because consistency is going to trump everything you do. Consistency. If you are consistent, you will get results based on that consistency. The RP app, I know, actually gives you a score on your adherence, which is always motivating and illuminating. If you get an adherence score of 95, you were 95% adherent to your goals and to what your tasks were, or if you were 40% adherent, that's a big delta. And you can see that, hey, I understand why I have no idea what's going on because I didn't adhere to what I was trying to do. And then if you really want to get serious, you can go for the Macro Factor app, which is definitely the most advanced. The data recap features on this thing look insane. If you're a nerd like me and you really want to get all the data possible, it might be a goal for you to work your way towards using the Macro Factor app. So there are definitely tools out there that can help you with this stuff. But let's start to wrap this thing up by finishing with what I think is most important. Tracking your food is not a must. It's just not necessary for you to do in order to obtain your goals. It's helpful. It is a tool. It can be useful. But what it does do really well is it allows you, the consumer, to understand serving sizes, how energy dense different foods really are. You could eat some foods for days like nuts or butters or breads and pastas and really not realize how much energy, calories that they contain. You start to see that veggies and protein are super hard to overeat and they're super nutrient dense. You start allocating more foods that make you feel good and take away the foods that don't. Awareness. I think most people who struggle with weight loss should try a period of time where they track for this reason and this reason only. But is it required? No. If you're not going to track your food, that is totally fine. There are large levers that you can pull, big rocks that you can focus on. That's going to simplify this way down. Everything we just talked over, we can simplify it. Number 1, first, prioritize your sleep. Sleep will impact your body composition drastically. Lack of sleep brutally affects your muscle mass, your recovery, your food decisions, your cognitive willpower, your energy, and so much more. Good sleep, it starts as soon as you wake up. Get sunlight on your eyes, in your eyes as early as possible. Set your circadian rhythm up from the get-go. You can have caffeine, but not past 2 p.m. Try not to have caffeine past 2 p.m. As the sun sets, all of your lights around you should also dim down. Transition from overhead lights to red lamps, candlelight. Do your best here, of course. Minimize your screen time within 2 hours of your bedtime. You could go with audiobooks, regular books, board games with your family. You could journal, meditate, do some yin yoga. The goal is to minimize the blue light from the screens, but also minimize the crazy hormonal roller coaster something like a social media scrolling session can do. If you see anything stimulating, politics, fistfights, riots, social discrimination, all of these things, whether it's that impactful for you or not, all of these things release cortisol and adrenaline and just really affect your sleep negatively. Set up your sleep routine. Mine is 90 minutes long. So we have a masterclass episode on sleep. We refer to the sleep master himself, Mr. Sean Stevenson, who wrote the book, Sleep Smarter. Sleep, sleep, sleep. It's the first big lever you can pull if you're not tracking your food, if food tracking is not for you. Next, nutrition. Eat whole foods. The experts agree, whether it's this diet or that diet or this way of eating or what, all the experts agree that highly ultra-processed palatable foods cause you to overeat. If it's in a box, bag, if it has a barcode, it's probably ultra-processed and it was probably designed by scientists to make you eat as much of it as possible. Now, it's been proven foods with one ingredient, blueberry, kiwi, turkey, salmon, broccoli, kale, those are the foods that you want to eat. If you've seen a commercial for it, it's probably not a whole food and it's probably highly ultra processed. You've seen plenty of commercials for Lucky Charms and Snickers and Coors Light and Skittles. It's best to avoid these foods if your goal is body composition changes. If you know where the food came from just by looking at it, that's a great start. And instead of taking things out of your diet, telling yourself that you can't have chocolate, you can't have ice cream, you can't have alcohol, instead of taking away, try adding. The mind works way better with addition than subtraction here. Add in 2 more glasses of water. Add in 1 cup of blueberries. Add in 4 ounces of protein for dinner. If you add, the other stuff is going to slowly phase and remove itself out. And when you start feeling better, you'll connect that feeling to your new eating behaviors, and it's much more likely to stick long term. Avoid drinking your calories. Liquid calories are so easily digested and quickly add up in energy. This is a hack that I use for people that are trying to gain weight. If we are trying to gain weight, we quickly transition them to more liquid calories. Shakes in between meals and smoothies and this and that. Try to get those liquid calories in because they don't fill up as fast. So if your goal is weight loss, you're going to want to do the opposite. Limit the juices. For sure, the alcohols and the sodas. I also put diet sodas in this category, but technically the current studies show that diet sodas actually don't have an effect on weight gain. However, I and many of the experts that I follow, I do believe that it affects our daily behaviors and our cravings and just how we consume food and drinks later throughout the rest of the day. So if what you're doing isn't working, try to take that stuff out. The energy drinks too, which is sad for me to say. After sleep and eating whole foods, you have to lift weights. Lift heavy weights. Resistance training, at least 3 days a week. Hit each major muscle group, your legs, your back, your chest, your arms, your core. Hit each of those major muscle groups at least twice a week. So you could do 2 to 3 full body lifts and break that up over the week however you want to, or you could split it up into specific body part splits like legs and shoulders, chest and tri, back and bi, as long as you're hitting each major muscle group twice per week. You could also follow a group fitness program or get a personal trainer, but it's mandatory. Lift heavy weights. I'm putting my foot down on this topic. Muscle is the tissue of longevity, of strength, of independence, of confidence. It is the answer. Build muscle. The more you have, the better. I'm not going to go too far into this one because if you want to hear more on this argument for lifting and getting muscle, then just send me a message and I'll get you more content and more info on this topic than you could ever want. So sleep, whole foods, lifting heavy, the next big lever that you can pull, it's so important. It's been a game changer for so many of my clients, and that is to avoid sedentary activity throughout your day for more than 1 hour at a time. If you're sitting, if you're standing in one place, if you're driving, if you're on your computer, your phone, if you're still for an hour, then you have to move your body. Even if it's just for 30 to 60 seconds, even if it's just to stand up, do a couple of bodyweight squats and sit back down. Your heart does an amazing job of pumping blood to your arms and your legs, your hands, your feet. But blood and lymph goes into smaller offshoots of your lymphatic system, the capillaries of all your soft tissues. And those offshoots, they need movement to help them get that fluid back to your veins and back to your heart to be reoxygenated and pumped back to your body. If your legs don't move, I want you to visualize stagnant pond water accumulating. If you have a pond and you have a huge pump that can pump through the entire pond, that is movement. Now let's say you substitute that bigger pump for a smaller pump, and now that pump can only pump a portion of that pond. That is sedentary activity. Those little offshoots, the peripheral limbs, all the way out there towards your fingers and your toes, they're waiting for something to help move it so it can get removed properly. Desk job people, set an alarm on your phone. Get an Oura Ring or an iWatch or some other device that reminds you when you've been still for too long. You don't need to do hours and hours and hours of cardio. That's not what our ancestors did. They had active lives that required a lot more movement and a lot more manual physical labor throughout the day just to survive. Think of all the things that technology does for us. We press a button to roll down our car windows. We don't even manually roll them down or up anymore. We commute everywhere on wheels instead of through muscular power. We have apps on our phones that unlock doors and turn on lights, and we rarely carry heavy things. We rarely get our heart rate up. So we have to do this thing that was just invented recently called exercise. Exercise wasn't a thing 100 years ago unless they were training for something specific. People got their movement in simply by living life. We have to start thinking of ways to getting back to that. How can we make things harder? Yeah, I know. Our whole life has been efficiency and easy and instant gratification. That's why we are where we are. So how do we make things a little bit harder? I'm going to give you a glimpse into my weird brain. Every time I do a task, I think, what would the average person do here? And what could only the fittest 1% of the population do in this situation? So I search out the stairs and I avoid elevators. I search out the furthest parking spot, and along the way, when I'm walking that long walk from the back of the parking lot to the store, I balance on sidewalk ledges and I jump over rails and I hang from tree branches. If I'm on the floor, I think, how can I get up without using anything but my feet? Could I do a pistol squat from this seated position? Could I balance on one leg to pick up this item off the floor without touching it with any other body part? You're thinking, why, coach? Why? That sounds ridiculous. Why would I do this? And if I'm being completely honest, it is weird. I know that. But it's partly, yes, I want to be the fittest 1%, but it's also about fear. Fear of seeing 99% of the advanced age clients that I train and how their body is deteriorating in front of their eyes, and they think that there's nothing they can do about it. Seeing how adults barely older than me can no longer hang their body weight for more than 10 seconds. How they can't get off the floor at all. They need assistance. There's no way that they're going to sprint or jump. Their body is paring down all of these things that they've stopped doing over time because they haven't used it, they've lost it. So why do I always strive to do the hardest thing? Because I want to be 90 years old, getting off the floor with a pistol squat. I want to be 90 years old, balancing on one leg easily. I want to be 90 years old and be able to hold my body weight up on a jungle gym while I'm playing with my little ones in my family tree, running around with me. 90 years old, independent, healthy, happy, capable, able-bodied. Looking good and feeling good is going to be a byproduct of doing the hard thing. Everything you want is on the other side of hard. I can promise you that. Now, when I say the hard thing, I'm not saying the hardest of the hard, like you're not going to do a backflip every time you get out of your car, but you should always choose to make the things that you do just a little more challenging than the easiest automatic default choice that everyone else makes. Not only does this give you a little more self-confidence, but it's a snowball that rolls downhill. It builds momentum. It builds mass. It really compounds to something incredible if you're consistent over time. So stack your sedentary behavior, your phone calls, your TV watching, your scrolling with an active one. Maybe you walk on your phone calls. Maybe you do mobility while you're TV watching. Maybe you sit in a deep squat while you're scrolling. Movement is life. Motion is lotion, and fitness is medicine. And that brings us nicely to this last big lever that we want to touch on today. It's not all the levers that are out there, but this is a really big one, and it has to do with movement for sure, but also stress management, and that is walks in nature. You got movement, you got activity, but you got to do something outside. Get outside, move your body, and do this with the intention of stress management. Make it you time. Connecting with something that we lose sight of so very often. We are part of a larger organism. As much as we wish to separate ourselves from nature, we are a part of nature. And actually a pretty small part in the big picture that is this huge living organism of Mother Earth. Your body, think of your body right now. It's made up of millions, billions of microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi. We have a prehistoric single-celled best friend in our cells called mitochondria that create who we are. It gives us the energy that we need to do everything that we do. These microorganisms are a piece of the bigger whole that is our body. And we're the same thing to the earth. We are just one piece of a bigger whole, and we are all connected, which is so mind-blowing to even think about. We lose sight of this as we get so myopically focused on our first world problems. But walks in nature with minimal distraction, with an opportunity for you to really find gratitude in moving your body and in grounding out all that crazy high energy electrical stuff that happens as we accumulate through our crazy go, go, go lives. These are the non-sexy big rocks, friends. We already know all about this. We just don't invest the time in it. So yes, I know this episode was supposed to be about counting calories and how they're useful. And yes, I do think that everyone should do it if they struggle with their body composition. I think if you can educate yourself and learn things that you didn't know, illuminate some of that pitch black warehouse to see just a slightly bigger picture, you'll be arming yourself with the weapons to fight any battle that you encounter. But you don't have to. Sleep, eat whole natural foods, add instead of subtract, lift heavy, minimize your sedentary activity time, and walk in nature. There are some of your answers right there. Those are some of the tools you can use for a happy, fit, and long lifespan. We definitely did not cover all the big rocks, but those are some of my favorites. Those are some of the things that have had the biggest impact on my life. What did I miss? What would you include? Let me know what your big rocks are. I would love to know. Let me know if you've tracked your food intake and how that's gone. Did it help you or did it hurt? Did you learn anything that could help you, or was it way too stressful? What would you recommend to someone at the beginning of their journey to start with? I want to hear from you. Let me know. For me, I think awareness, consistency, trial and error, and learning what works for you is the way to go. You got this. And that's it, my friends, for this week's Megaphone episode. Each week, we're going to focus on sharing information that will help you with your health, fitness, and wellness journey. Share the knowledge that you gained today with your friends and family and hold each other accountable. If you enjoyed this content, it helps a ton if you could post on your social media stories a screenshot of this episode with one takeaway that you learned, and make sure you tag me and share your journey. You can tag me at Livin the Dream _podcast or at Coach Damien _SD. And let us know how this episode benefited you. Let's get more people on this lifelong learner train and join the Livin the Dream team. Message us if you have any suggestions or tips that will help your Livin the Dream team out that we can discuss on future episodes. I will be right here with you, working on making us stronger, happier, and healthier humans. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.